Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Alberta News and Views, the best podcast in the prairies with the best newsletter in the prairies. You can listen to me on Substack and Spotify. And for all of you out there, if you haven't already, please join up and please share. It is built by the people for the people. Today, Danielle Smith held a press conference, and she was asked if the recall legislation that is going on right now to recall Mayor WAPOW Gondek in Calgary is undemocratic. This article right here is just brutal. It's terrible. We're going to go over it after this video with Danielle Smith. You actually won't believe what is written in there and what these people are thinking. Maybe you will believe it. Things are pretty chaotic right now. Here is the best premier in Canada by far. She is the envy of the East. She really is. Listen to Danielle Smith.
Next caller.
Rick Bell, Post Media.
Good afternoon, Premier. This is a question a bit down the highway here in Calgary. As you know, there's a petition drive to recall the mayor of Calgary. A few days ago, a piece was published by supporters of the mayor, and it took aim at a piece of provincial legislation, which is, of course, the recall legislation. And they said that it was disempowering the majority and undermining our democracy, defying democratic principles and subverting the power of the people, and that, in effect, democracy was under attack by having a recall. It's your provincial government's legislation. I know you're still looking at it if you want to make changes to it. What do you say to people who think that recall is actually undermining democracy and subverting the power of the people?
It's funny, I've heard the opposite complaint, that we've set the bar too high, and therefore those who do want to be able to recall a politician that they feel is going in a different direction than they campaigned on, it's actually too high a bar for them to be able to have a meaningful recall campaign. And so, and I'll tell you one of the things that we've seen in the act that may need to be addressed is that we have made the bar 40% of total population. So if you think about that, in a city like Calgary, that means that for a successful campaign to proceed, it would need 500,000 signatures. And I believe the mayor got 177,000 signatures in the general election. So look, I mean, if 3 times the number of people who voted for a person say that they want to reconsider it, then that seems to me to be a pretty strong expression of democracy. But it does give you an indication of just how high the bar actually is. And when I say we may have set it too high, is that it seems a little unfair that you'd have to have a petition campaign that would include everyone under the age of 18, people who are not eligible to vote because they're not citizens. It seems like a more reasonable approach would be to do 40% of the electorate.
Yeah.
That would make a bit more sense. That being said, it's under active discussion, and we're not going to make any changes while there are any live recall campaigns going on.
And fair.
But what do you say to these people who say the whole concept of recall is bad? We shouldn't have recall at all because it's somehow undemocratic, or it's they don't want recall at all. They don't care what the signatures are. They just want the whole thing obliterated. What do you say to people who like the people who published this, who literally are against recall, full stop? No recall.
Look,
this is actually bad.
Well, I disagree. I mean, we're not subjecting any other politician to rules that don't also apply to ourselves. This is for school board trustees, it's for municipal members of council, and it's also for MLAs. And so, again, as I said, I've heard the opposite complaint, that we've set the bar too high. But I would put it to you that part of what a recall, part of the idea behind recall is that if politicians end up doing something completely opposite that the electorate expected them to do, or they do something that they never campaigned on, and the electorate feels frustrated by that, there has to be some mechanism between a 4-year election cycle to get that issue reconsidered. So we wanted to set a high bar because you don't want the public to be recalling people for every little thing. But I think that it's an important part of democracy. I would say it's the opposite. I think giving the power to the people is an important aspect of making sure that politicians keep their word.
Exactly. It's undemocratic if you lean or use the democratic system to get in and then push your agenda. Kind of like what's going on, what goes on all the time. It happened to us in Alberta with Rachel Notley.
Okay,
Out
we
of
have time
nowhere.
for one or two more.
Out of nowhere, she brings in the carbon tax. That was nowhere on her platform. And then she leaned on, or she was saying, they had a climate policy, so she just snuck it in that way. And apparently that was that got the green light with her voters. Anyway, moving on to Calgary Herald. You won't believe how this is written. It's actually pretty shameful that she was asked a question to even acknowledge this. It's a short read. Check this out. The attempt to recall Calgary's mayor defies democratic principles and subverts the power of the people. The majority of voters elected Yodi Gondek in every single ward in Calgary. And now a small group of people want to upheave democracy because they can't comprehend that the majority of people don't share their perspective. Well, let's start with that. This was just a crazy election for all of you out there that don't know. She got the majority of voters in every single ward in Calgary. That is unheard of because nobody really even heard of who Yodi Gondek is. So when you dive into it, you find out that there was a record amount of third-party spending, third-party donors, and they all coincidentally happen to be the biggest unions in Alberta, joint unions. It says right here, once again, the biggest spenders in the recent Alberta municipal election were unions. This has been generally acknowledged as contributing significantly to the election of a so-called progressive city government in Calgary and the continuation of the big spending policies of former Mayor Naheed Nenshi and the majority of his colleagues on council. The largest PAC, is Political Action Committee, involved in the municipal election in Calgary was the so-called Calgary's Future Group, which is funded primarily by a variety of unions and is estimated to have spent $1.7 million supporting a slate of candidates very much in favor of the type of high-tax, high-spending policies pursued by Nenshi. And for those of you that don't know, Naheed Nenshi is supposedly running for the leadership of the NDP party right now. I don't know if he officially announced it, but they're pretty sure he is. The winning Calgary mayor candidate, Yodi Gondek, was very much the favored candidate of the unions. Gondek will also be the first female mayor of Calgary. There's more. So normally it's really easy to get that information on spending and donors, but they purposely withheld it for a long time so people didn't find out. Well, they didn't find out this right here. So backtrack a little bit. This is Lori Williams. She is an associate professor in the Department of Policy Studies at Mount Royal University. She dove into this and she got the numbers for everyone. Here, so two of the TPAs, which is third-party advertisers, Calgarians for Progressive Future, known as Calgary's Future, and Fluoride Yes, had earlier voluntarily released their donor information. Calgary's Future received $1,708,826 in the years leading up to the 2021 election. There were 6 contributions, all from civic unions like the Amalgamated Transit Union and 2 locals with the Canadian Union of Public Employees. Here is the important part. Calgary's Future endorsed numerous candidates in the election, including Yodi Gondek, who was elected as mayor, as well as several now serving councillors. So what they did is they funded everybody because then they wouldn't lose and they would guarantee that they had this mayor in Calgary. She did not get the majority of votes from regular Calgarians. She was selected and she got plunked in there. So continuing on with this complete trash, right? Journalism here. It goes on to say the role of Calgary's democratically elected mayor is a leadership role. The mayor, like each councillor, holds just one vote meaning governing power is shared with the councillors, the picked councillors, by the way. This vocal minority is intentionally trying to make an example of Gondek and is signaling to others that they have more power than the citizens who voted for her in a democratic election. This article completely disregards that the people voting to remove her might be voters themselves, and if they get more votes, well, then that's the majority of people that voted for her anyway. In today's media environment, when sensationalized headlines get more clicks than consistency and hard work, where outrage and the pile-on effect overrides thoughtful analysis, we must challenge ourselves to dig deeper, to understand the bigger picture here. Democracy is at the heart of the issue. Calgarians elected Gondek to serve as mayor, giving her the responsibility to govern until the next election. That is how democracy works. Whether or not you agree with Gondek, it doesn't matter what you think. What cannot be disputed is her hard work, particularly in this area of polycrisis. She is focused on making the lives of Calgarians better and positioning our city as innovative and prepared for the future. This is a rarity in today's political landscape, where grandstanding and short-term gains often take precedence over strategy and substance. At its core, some opposition to Gondek's leadership may reflect a broader societal resistance to change and notions of what an effective leader looks like. Those filthy conservatives. 36 of Calgary's 37 mayors have been men. How dare they? 35 of them white. What the fuck? 35 of them white? White people in Alberta? The vast majority in Calgary? That is just crazy. There must be a system here. Calgarians lack experience with female leadership and non-white leaders, especially when those leaders not only deviate from the prescribed norms, but consistently challenge the status quo. Oh man, just brutal. Brutal. Criticism is inevitable in public office, but it's important to know the difference between legitimate critique and baseless attacks. Gondek has faced her fair share of challenges, yet she remains undeterred in her mission to serve Calgary with integrity. Seeing such people in leadership roles is long overdue. Seeing such people excelling in leadership roles should be celebrated. Democracy is the power of the people for the people. This effort behind the recall is all about disempowering the majority and undermining our democracy. No, my friend, this is about getting rid of a mayor that is doing a shit job. She is the worst mayor in Calgary's history, according to every single poll done on her all the time. Nobody likes her. It has nothing to do with the color of her skin or her gender. Sorry. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Please follow me on Substack and Spotify. All of you out there, like, share, and take care.